Well, hello, everyone, and
Hello.
hello, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Refounding Democracy. We are, as always, looking at the relationship between democracy and authoritarianism and how we can change our thinking and our concepts and implement them as work in order to defend democracy and push back against authoritarianism around the world. For the past several weeks, we have been focused on Ukraine, one of the places in the world where the fight for democracy is at its most heated, probably the hottest front in this worldwide conflict right now. And as people have heard so much about. And we've been trying to go beyond the headlines. Hello, Peter, and welcome back.
Hello, hello,
Hello.
hi.
Hey, hi. Just
Oh,
we just started streaming, so and I'm just introducing today's topic. So we will get to you
Victoria.
in
Oh,
just a second, and we're going to introduce Victoria, and we're going to introduce you. So just, I know we're all so excited. All right.
yes, let's
Yes,
go.
go. Uh, we are we've
Go where?
well, this is one of the choices that human freedom burdens us with. We want to
Oh,
go, we don't know where, and this is what we have to talk about today. And maybe by the end of the program, we'll know. Okay?
okay, I hope so.
I
Yeah.
God, I hope so. Uh, so, uh, so, uh, human freedom being both a burden and a sacred blessing, Ukraine is fighting with everything it's got to maintain its human freedom against the unprovoked and outrageous onslaught from the Russian forces. And we've been trying here to go. There's been much in the news, of course, about the war, about Bakhmut and Biden and F-16s, and we're by the way, I'm just going to come right out with the editorial. F-16s should be delivered last year, and if not last year, then as soon as possible, so that Ukraine can have everything it needs to defend itself and fight back. But we've been trying to go beyond these headlines to talk more about why this fight is so important, why Ukraine's fight is also our fight, which is the fight for human dignity and freedom around the world. And to do that, we've been spending several weeks talking about Ukraine, about volunteerism in civil society, about the decolonization of their language and literature, the turning away from Russian language to an embrace of Ukrainian language and their own literary traditions and history. We talked about Ukraine's educational system. Now, I'm going to have to apologize that we had to miss last week, and the real we talk sometimes we look at things through the lens of philosophy, history, and economics, sometimes digging into analytic philosophy fairly deeply. So it's sometimes hard to know causality is a tricky concept. It's sometimes hard to know what causes what, but I think we can safely say that the reason we did not have the show last week was because I left my phone in an Uber in Kyiv and spent all day trying to get it back. Ultimately, successfully with the help of staff from the Kyiv School of Economics and also from the Kyiv police. No thanks at all, frankly, to Uber, and really no thanks at all to Vasil, the outrageously irresponsible Uber driver who wanted to steal my phone instead of getting it back to me. But thank you, Artem from the Kiev police. You are a mensch and a hero, and your name shall be redounded to glory. We're going to name a fellowship on the show after you, Artem. Thank you. And
Are we on the air, by the way?
we're on the air, yeah. And
Okay.
we need a shout out to
Yeah.
Anastasia from the Kiev School of Economics. So Anastasia's last name is What is Anastasia's last name, Victoria? Um,
Uh, Last name
Yeah,
Serbin.
Serbin,
Yes,
Anastasia Serbin, thank you. And with an assist from Victoria, whom we're going to be meeting just about now. Today, we're going to be speaking about the role of women in Ukraine, gender issues, and LGBT issues. And now, of course, one of the the central premises of a free society, of a truly free society, is that of equality and the ability for everyone to find their own path, to choose their own direction, as Peter might suggest, and to exercise their own autonomy, to flourish as a human being in the way that they find for themselves. And one of the central themes of an authoritarian society is to deny that opportunity and to create hierarchies that put some people in charge and others on the receiving end of that, of being in charge. And one of the central dimensions along which this inevitably takes place is around dimensions of gender and sexuality. So the fight for gender equality and for the freedom and autonomy of sexual minorities is inevitably central to the fight for human freedom. And so this is why we want to spend some time talking about what's going on in Ukraine around these issues. We understand that things are not perfect in Ukraine as they are not anywhere else, but we want to try to understand and learn and understand how the fight for freedom in the war is or is not or may be interacting with the fight along these dimensions as a way to understand, again, the process of a society transforming and becoming, I hope, and I like to think, a freer society, and one that is is stepping up to the challenge of making itself freer. So for that reason, we're going to talk today about status of women and gender and LGBT in Ukraine. So, and we're very pleased to have, we're actually going to have two guests today. First, want to introduce Vika, this Victoria, oh my goodness, it begins with a B. I know we met, but tell us again, sorry, Victoria, what is your last name?
Borisenko.
Victoria Borisenko is a student at Kyiv Polytechnic, one of the premier, if not the premier, technical universities in Ukraine, and working in biomedical engineering. And she's, we've already started some interesting conversations together about the status of women and about her aspirations for what the status, what women's role could be in Ukraine, and we want to continue that now. Also want to introduce, as always, our co-host Peter Lupu, who is the chair of the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies at Glendale Community College in Glendale, Arizona, in the Phoenix area, coming to us several thousand kilometers and 3 hours away, but not behind. Surely you're not behind. You're just different.
I'm always behind.
No, you're leading from behind. Yeah.
I am always behind, which means I'm ahead.
Right, because you have because you have the advantage of our experience several hours ahead, and can
right.
Would you prefer to be called Victoria or Vika in this setting? How about Victoria?
Like one.
Okay. How about Victoria? We started talking before about the way in Ukrainian society traditionally women have been idealized, and what a problematic situation this creates. Can you tell us about these thoughts and expand on them a little more?
In the history, yeah, of course, the women always were a good housekeeper. They were a good mothers and so on. A woman weren't allowed to do man's job, but then when the Soviet Union occupied our territory, and we became the part of this women started work also like a man, but they paid less than men.
Really? For the
Also,
same, so just to be clear, for the same job or the same levels of experience and so
on
on?
the factories, on the fields, wherever it can be. Yes, unfortunately, that problem also in our society.
And
No.
was there any, let's recall the part of the ideological justification for the Soviet Union was that it actually was a more equal society, created more equality for women, more opportunity. You weren't stuck at home. You were more allegedly able to participate in society. Was there any attempt to justify why women were paid less for the same job, or they just didn't talk about it, or what? You know.
I have an answer for that.
Yes.
Maybe because man should provide like money to family, and woman is not so important to have their own money. But it's my thought.
Let's recall. So Peter, remind us, where did you grow up originally?
I grew up in Romania under communism.
Yeah, under Ceausescu times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the answer to the question is why? Is because communism is about equally exploiting everybody.
Yeah. So there's
So
wait. I have to challenge you on this, because the truth is that, you see, under capitalism, man exploits man, but under socialism, it's just the opposite.
Right. I mean, my question is to Victoria is, under the Soviet Union, were there any questions about why there is disparity in pay or in conditions, or the society simply accepted it because of maybe tradition or any other reasons? Were there any questions raised about this practice?
Maybe because of traditions that man should own money, and that's why there were no questions. But I wasn't born in the Soviet Union, and everything I know it's from my mother, grandmother. So, and they didn't want to talk about that. They didn't, and now they don't see the problem. And even now, and we don't have this equality in society about payment. A lot of women and men, middle-aged, they don't see any problem with that.
So, 1991, Ukraine becomes independent of the Soviet Union, and but it sounds like a lot of the let's say traditions, both explicit and unspoken, continued in terms of women having being paid less for the same work, and having expectations for being mothers, and the sort of have so between, I don't know if you have any thoughts maybe from listening to your mother and grandmother or others about, say, from 1991 to the Revolution of Dignity, 2013-14, was there pretty much things stayed the same? Or was there any progress?
As my mother said, that she noticed progress. I don't know if in her case the payments were really equally, but it was higher, and she had less hour to work. And she said that yes, it was much better than it was maybe in I don't know 80s, because it was very no 80s 90s sorry, when the Ukraine became independent. It was very hard economic situation, but after a few years it was much better than in Soviet Union and in the first years of our independence.
Mm-hmm. Now you were I guess a teenager during, or a younger person, and then a teenager after the Revolution of Dignity, which is an important point of change, a moment of change in Ukraine's history. Have you observed or felt that the Revolution of Dignity made any particular impact on the status of women, or the relations between men and women, or maybe teenage girls and teenage boys?
I don't know if it improved a lot, but I think or I don't know how to say, like, yes, it felt like we on the right way, and something like in progress a little bit, but it's still after a revolution, not so much things were changed, and no so much topics were show to the world and our society, but I think we are on the right way.
When you were when you were a teenager, when you were, say, interacting with boys, or you were did you feel like there was an expectation of social equality, or was there an expectation that of inequality? Is that a clear question?
I think it's a clear question, but I do not feel full quality between like men my age.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that we are equally, like, boys are very strong and you are quiet and good. So,
Mm-hmm.
and no, there is not much progress. But sometimes I meet people that have good ideas, and they open-minded, and don't have so much stereotypes and standards like majority of men.
Peter, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, this raises, if you permit me, a philosophical question.
I will permit it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm a gracious and giving host, and this is why I permit this.
Yeah. Thank you, and send me the memo about the permission, so I have a.
Yeah, you want a receipt? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about equality, and it's a very difficult concept, because on the one hand, we don't want to say that even just among men, all men are equal. But we are not.
Because some are more equal than others.
There are many, many differences between just any group of people. So if equality means strict equality, then that's just false. What we need to be nuanced about is that there are differences and similarities, and how society organizes itself is to respect both the differences and the similarities. Mm-hmm. And then we have to talk about equality with respect to something.
Right. Equality of what?
Equality of what?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason it's so hard to create a genuinely a just society is to respect both the differences and the similarities, and then organize the society in a way which respects both, but also that it defines properly what equality with respect to what. So, for example, equality with respect to work should be based on a certain criteria that we decide, or society decides, and then those criteria should govern. So, for example, if there is work, then the criteria should be equal pay for equal work, regardless of whether a man is, 4.5 or a woman is 4.5. It should be the same exact thing with respect to equal pay for equal work. And the same with respect to all the other stations in society. It should be based on a nuanced criteria. So, for example, offices should be available to everybody in an equal way who can satisfy the conditions of the office. By office, I mean
You mean
any particular
an office, a political office, a political
political
post,
yes,
some
governmental
kind of position of
office
authority. Yeah.
Right. So we don't want to say that we are all equal. So therefore, a 2-year-old is going to be able to be the representative of whatever. So there has to be a nuance, and that is why it's so hard for societies to be genuinely just.
So I'd like you to grab hold of your desk, Peter. Could you do that, please? Okay, because I'm going to push back against.
You're going to push back.
I'm going to push back against what you just said, because I actually wonder how, in operational practice, how difficult it actually is. So often you can, when you see justice, you can tell it when you see it. You can tell a just organization when you see it. So if you can see and feel people being treated unequally in ways that are not supported by any relevant differences in their capacity to do a job. Yes, sometimes it's hard to maybe draw fine lines, but often it's really quite obvious. The most discouraging cases are quite obvious.
So I would like to ask Victoria. Yes, I agree with you, and I'm gonna say something about that. But I would like to hear what Victoria has to say, how she envisions a society that is just in the sense that Athena just mentioned. That is.
Okay, I want to hold off on that question because I want to go back. I want to bring that in just a minute. Did thinking about your relationship with, say, when you were a teenager, with teenage boys or young men, did you feel like they were already trained, already taught to see women not as equal members of society? Yeah. Like so at age 14, 15, 16.
It's from the toddler age, I don't know. It's from the childhood. Mm-hmm. We can see it's everywhere, unfortunately.
Uh-huh. And how did you talk about that with first, or did you talk about that with each other, with other girls or young women? Not much. That's
someone still think that like my place on the kitchen, so I not allowed to tell more. do not tell a lot about this topic.
Hmm. Can I ask? So, where did you grow up?
In Ukraine,
Yeah, but
and
where in Ukraine?
uh, little town Chernihiv. It's mm, another another
So is this northwest of Kyiv?
north. No, it's
No, sorry, northeast of Kyiv. This is right near Belarus.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is a
We
place.
have we have the like broad with Belarus and Russia.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of influence
Mhm.
from Russia when we were in Soviet Union.
Yeah. And so would you say it's a place that's more traditional than Kyiv? Or it's about the same?
I don't know I don't know how to answer that. Maybe it is more traditional because a lot of teenagers and young people go to Kyiv to pay more, to like develop their skills, to find job, to study. And in my town, more middle-aged people.
Did you okay, so I was teaching at Kyiv School of Economics, and I had a lot of young women in my classes who seemed very capable and confident, and they looked to me like they felt themselves equal to the men around them, and they carried themselves in a way that suggested they expected to be treated equally, and they were going to insist on it, and they were going to insist on it in their professional lives, for example. Is I only saw them part of the time. Do you think that that's an accurate picture for, let's say, for those women, or so for those who are going to elite universities, who are getting trained to go into more elite jobs? Is there a greater equality of expectations and of genuine opportunity, do you think? Maybe those who are going in at Kyiv Polytechnic and studying biomedical engineering, do you feel like you are able to expect to be respected or not?
I want to be respected, but I know that it will be hard. And it will be a long way to the quality in different fields.
So let me say that from what data that I've seen in the U.S., if you are looking at, say, young professionals, so those who are going to the top schools, they're going into the more higher paying professions, that women can expect to be paid about as well as men. Actually, they can as well as men, statistically indistinguishable, for at least the first several years of their career. And they're actually in the U.S. now, I believe, a slightly larger fraction of those who are in college and university. Slightly more women than men are in university, and they're graduating and getting into, they're at least in those early years of their professional lives, they can expect to have opportunity, at least on these first order questions of, can you get a job, and if you get a job, will it be as well paid as men? They can expect to do about as well as men and again, this is only talking about a kind of elite section of society, and it's only talking about part of the experience, which is getting a job and and how you're paid. It's not talking about sexual harassment on the job. It's not talking about a lot of other things that make up the life experience. But focusing on that part of the picture, do you feel that say when you go out to look to get a graduate degree or to go for getting a job, do you expect that you will be able to compete equally with men?
Complete.
Yes.
You mean?
You'll get the same opportunity that men have. Not to say it's easy, if it's not easy for anyone, but you'll have the same
Okay, yeah,
opportunity.
I can really have a great degree and then go to job. Yeah, of course, but also with that, there is a huge pressure from society that, like, yes, we must graduate from university, find job, but then we should get married and have children. And we should combine it all the time. And
yeah, right. So yes, have the great career and get married and have kids. And when you have the kids, you take care of them. And you keep the house. Yeah.
If you don't not graduated from university, you're a loser. If you find job without degree and high education, but like okay. If you have education, have a job, but do not have family, you're a loser. Yeah, if you have a family but do not have education and degree, you're also a loser. So we should have all this to be happy.
And if you do all that and you have any trouble, because that's simply too much to ask of any human being, male or female, then I mean, is that part of, is that, do you feel like, I mean, there's I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, there's something called the second shift. You do you go to work, 8 in the morning until 5, and you do that first shift. Then you come home and you have another whole job. The second job, the second shift of work.
Yes.
Right. For the young women in your, say, community, the young women that you know, do you talk about these things?
I try to talk about this with my mother and grandmother, but it's very difficult conversation with them all the time because they used to this system and they don't see any problem with that.
Really?
And they taught me to be like that, but because I have more information, I have internet, I see other ways to live, and I know that I have a choice. I do not share their vision of life, and that's what about my generation is.
But I noticed you did not mention speaking about it with your peers, with other young women, your friends or other young women.
My friends share my visions with me, but they are my friends, and we love the same things. And I do not know what other girls think about this.
Do you have any? And I'm not hearing you say that you feel like things are. Well, let's say things are better than they were 30 years ago.
A little bit, yes.
A little bit. But it doesn't feel like I don't hear you saying there's a revolution underway, things are, everyone's changing their point of view and there's a big, a big push going on. That's not happening either. Is that right?
Mm,
Is
yeah.
that a fair description? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to now bring back Peter's question. He's still hanging onto the desk, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. I guess it's hard to know if people don't even talk about it, then you don't even, if if nobody talks about it, then nobody has to even try to explain why this is unfair. Nobody even has to say, that there's something wrong with this. If nobody even
But now
talks
we are
about it.
talking. But now we are talking about it. So let's pin down. Why is it unfair?
Well, that's why I was going to ask if people say, if men were to say, well, this is fair, this is fine because it's traditional, or because women are less capable, or women are more capable, or whatever it is, then you could actually have an argument along that touches on the question that you raised. To what extent is this unfair? I'll editorialize. This is unfair. Okay, everyone. I hope no one's offended or shocked by that. Actually, I don't care if you're offended or shocked. This is unfair. And so how you, if something is unfair, typically people will attempt, and they don't want to change. They'll have some argument that attempts to justify the current situation. And as you were saying, Peter, they will attempt to justify it in terms of some, some reasoning that it actually is fair, if you think about it. So, but if you never even ask the question, then you don't even have you're not even forced to articulate a reason why it's okay. So does anyone try to, so Victoria, what I'm hearing you saying is nobody even talks about it, so there's no reason, nobody's even asking the questions, why is it like this?
Young women really, they asking these questions now. Mm-hmm. Because they feel this inequality, but like we are minority, so we can't get answer.
You just don't get an answer at all.
It is like it should be, and that's all.
Like this is the way it is, and it's the way it should be. That's it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is why it takes time to break these traditions.
Screw that. We want it done yesterday. We don't want it to take time. Unfairness should not be tolerated. But please continue.
Yeah, but it takes time.
Okay.
I mean, what we want and how it actually happens in a society that is that has strong traditions, it takes time. But also, I wanted to just say that in United States, the process of approaching a more and more just state of women, and it's still not yet just. It's not yet at the level of justice that it should be at. But here is the thing: when you change traditions, even if it is done piecemeal and gradually, without anticipating what are the some of the consequences of those changes, then new problems arise. Mm-hmm. And you don't, for example, are proactive about, okay, how are we going to solve these problems in a new arrangement? So one of the things that happened in the United States is that as women entered more and more after World War II, and it took a long time, into the workforce, there was more and more issues about, for example, who's going to take care of children? How are you going to manage the care for children? And that was never discussed, never proactively recognized the problem and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Because in order to take care in a proper way of children, in their education at home and so forth, you had to organize society in a different way. And it's still not done today.
No, it's done
And
terribly.
so what happens is, you know, if Aristotle would come to, you know, out of his grave and look at us today, he would say, I told you so. Because, of course, he had a very sharp separation between the private sphere and the public sphere. And women were supposed to be the
managers of the private sphere.
Of the private sphere, including, very importantly, the education of children. Mm-hmm. And so the current state in the United States is not an argument against the process of equality. It is an argument against doing it without anticipating the problems and solving them in an effective way. And so I think that you guys in Ukraine are at this stage, particularly because of the dignity revolution, what is called revolution of dignity.
Yes.
And now the current war, which requires women to be participating at all levels as a collective. What you're going to see is a process, hopefully after the war ends and Ukraine becomes free of the Russian brutality, there's going to have to be a reorganization of the society in order to include women more and more on an equal footing in various different public domains. And I think that it's a good idea to anticipate the problems. Mm-hmm. Because I bet with you, when you talk with your more elderly, particularly women, about how your younger generation want to have a career and success and all that, they will say, so who's going to take care of the children? No, Victoria?
They do. They ask this.
Yeah. And they have to have an answer to that question, rather than the way it happened in the United States, where basically there was no forethought about it and it just let it happen. And as a result, the children were kind of many sectors of society. The children were educated by the street. Not a very good education environment. Mm-hmm. So one of the recommendations I have is you have to anticipate these problems and think, okay, what would be a good solution to them?
Yeah, we can, I'll add one other. We had better schooling, better education in the United States generally, when women had fewer professional opportunities, because you had this very, half of the adult population was constrained to only a few professions, and so you had this supply of very talented people who were available for cheap to work in the public schools, and this worked great for the public schools, not so well for the women involved. Having them have greater access to a wider range of careers meant that there was a requirement to increase pay to retain people in education, but society did not step up, did not increase the pay, and so the attractiveness of the teaching profession has gone down, and societies in many ways suffered for that. So I guess
also, by the way, let me just add something from your standpoint, Adina, of economics. When women came into the workforce, suddenly there was more available workers. Therefore, given the fact that there was higher demand for jobs, they were able to keep the pay lower.
Right. It depressed in ways pay in other
Yeah.
professions. So, do you, Victoria, or either alone or with friends, do you imagine a better future?
Yeah, sure.
What does that look like?
It is about that these issues are raised more often. They should be raised more often, and of course, we need support from politician members, and there also must be an appropriate education, because a lot of teachers are teaching children in the way they shouldn't. Like the man is a man, woman is a woman. Like we have different genders, but they forget that we all humans beings. So we should change the education system and start be more respectful to each other. And I think it can be if we are keeping fight. So, and the perfect future is where every person is free and it can do anything they want, but it's not a criminal things.
Yes. So I want to mention some along these lines about how you think. Okay, if you think in terms to maybe draw some theoretical language, if you think in terms of the gender binary, there are men over here, there are women over here. They are different. There's this line in between, and there is and many would claim the social order, the functioning of society in a healthy way, some argue, requires that we maintain this gender binary, that we maintain that there is this role for men and a role for women. There's an area that men are in charge of, an area women are in charge of, and you are supposed to be on your side of that line and stay on that line. On your side, and that if you don't, that society falls apart. Women, the children won't get taken care of. Women will have sex everywhere, and all of society buildings will fall down because men no longer how to build things, and so on. That is what. So I'm going to note in conservative Christianity in the United States, there is a term that some language that they use to describe this, that there's a concept of they call it complementarianism, so that men and women are not equal, they are complementary. They're as if, like your left hand and your right hand are not the same hand. They are different, and they are, and your body is better off because they're different, because they work together in a complementary way. That's the term, complementarianism, and they don't like the alternative model of egalitarianism, and they're always on the lookout for people who are egalitarians instead of complementarians. And this is I'm bringing these terms up to note how deep the thinking goes, how deep the rhetoric goes, how deep the theory goes. That's the worldview that argues when what they'll say is, no, 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 we're not saying women are lesser. We're not saying that women have a less important role to play. They have this complementary, distinct role, and that they're actually, we're giving women the opportunity to be truly fulfilled by playing their appropriate role as God intended for them. Peter, is this, by the way, I don't want to say, is this the kind of stuff you run into? Victoria? Is this kind of language or thinking part of the by the way, I want to introduce our assistant host. This is Argus, assistant co-host Argus in the background. Right.
Yeah.
So is this part of and this kind of thinking, this kind of rhetoric is deeply embedded in conservative Christianity in the United States, which is mainly Protestant, but also Catholic conservatives have this. Is this part of what you are facing in Ukraine?
Yeah. Yes. I think so.
So that's a pretty hard thing to try to overcome. Any thoughts, any idea about like how deep and how strong this way of thinking is?
To be honest, I don't know.
Okay, that's all right. It's just if you happen to. But have you ever encountered that in your own life? Have you ever encountered people who talk like that? Yeah, you seem like I'm not sure if you want to share any stories about this, but you seem kind of unhappy when I bring this up. Maybe we'll. Maybe
I think that she mentioned previously many in passing the cases where you know the people who do the education already think of men and women differently.
I also wanted to note a counterpoint. So I was reading that in Sweden, that in primary school they no longer refer to boys and girls as separate categories. All the students are friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so all students are treated not just as, so they've abolished the gender binary, abolished the separate categorization of boys and girls. And so this is a quite a different vision of how, from the very beginning, you can bring up students in a way that doesn't enforce a gender binary or this kind of binary categorization.
I should mention, by the way, that the theory of complementariness is has very serious flaws, because one could argue that slaves and masters complemented each other. You have a slave society, then slaves and masters can be seen as complementing each other. The masters take care of the slaves do the manual work and whatever the masters don't want, and they complementariness is a very weak relationship because there are many different arrangements which can satisfy the idea of complementariness. Incidentally, I should mention that I read a couple of articles in the United States about this theory of women who went through this complementariness training. There's actually training that is involved. And they, after many years, they could no longer be part of it, and they left, and they were telling their experiences. And one of the things that they mentioned repeatedly, every one of the women that left, is that they were trained to internalize the idea that they are responsible for men's behavior. particularly when it comes to sexual sort of promiscuity. The women are responsible for that because they have to ensure that men are grounded in this sort of grounded and in their responsibilities to the family and that they're part of the complementary relationship. And so what happened was these young girls and women felt guilty constantly because they felt this responsibility to ensure that men are behaving the way they're supposed to behave according to the complementariness theory. And they were carrying this guilt for a long time. So these are the 2 points I just want to mention. Complementariness is a very weak relationship that can be used to justify even a slave-master relationship, or for that matter, any relationship.
Yeah. So, Victoria, do you have any? So do you see any particular program of you said you're looking for politicians who will take up the cause of women's equality and women's rights. There's a line in the Bible, I think it's the book of Isaiah, put not your faith in princes. That is, looking to political leaders to do the work for you is a tricky proposition. Do you have a thought about if, in addition to having your professional life and your home life, is there a political program that is community based, that let's say a feminist movement in Ukraine that you find effective or exciting or energizing that's happening right now? Maybe everything is just focused on the war right now, so these things are not really happening.
From the beginning of our independent country, we already had in our constitution we have the right, the equal rights, and with years, of course, we have more organizations. We have in political, I don't know, in politician also we have a support, but not enough to become equal now. I do not have certain examples, but through years I have this difference of what was it like in the beginning and now, and it is about women, LGBT people, bisexual people, and all these things. Like some politicians really wants to help us and provide us more opportunities, but because of old Russians influence, it is very slow. Yes, and because of some society's members, not some, the majority of society's members, we have so slow progress.
Is there?
I would like to introduce a few lessons, Victoria, from. So, it's a very interesting dynamic that is happening. We in United States and around the world need to learn a lot from Ukraine, and particularly what's happening in the last 10 years and then in the last 2 years from Ukraine. But Ukraine needs to learn from us.
Sure.
In particular, how we failed in certain things. So I want to bring up another aspect of failure in that I mentioned before. One failure, the other failure that is big is this. All of these, of course, social forces and state affairs involve many factors. But one big factor is this. Teachers used to have way back very, very high social status. That is when teachers were all men. I'm talking about across the board, right? Elementary school, high school, everywhere. When teachers were all men, primarily 90%, the status of being a teacher was very high in society. As things evolved, and there was a shift in the gender distribution, right now, I think in certain teaching professions, like teaching high school, elementary schools and high schools, I think it's primarily women in the United States.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the status of those positions decreased significantly. I'm talking about at all levels, space, social status, everything. And when you see that, you see, and now, of course, there may be other factors that contributed to that. But one of the big factors it's a fact that the social status, the financial status of being a teacher decreased as more and more women entered into the profession. And right now, I would say that maybe it's 65 or 70 to 30. 70% women, 30% men are in elementary school and high school.
Roughly. That's not a source statistic.
It's just a guess.
Yeah.
But clearly, there are now more women that are in those professions. And also clearly that the pay and the social status of those professions decline significantly. So one of the things that needs to be, that this lesson from this for Ukraine, as you go through this process of reorganizing society, which you will go through, is to pay attention to these flaws of the way things happen in the United States.
I'd like to offer a more fundamental way that we got it wrong, even more fundamental than this. I think to go after to change the opportunities for women, change the pay for women, reduce the expectations of both having a full-time job and of being the primary caretaker in the home, you have to go after the gender binary as a concept. Because if you change laws and you create, this is what we did in the US, we changed laws. Hello, Olga. Hey, welcome. We're
Hi.
Hi.
Duhanich?
Duhanich. Так.
Так.
In Ukraine.
What?
Yeah.
And could you adjust your camera so we could see all of your face? Thank you. It's such a great face. We want to see it all. Who's joining us? And Olia was my student at Kyiv School of Economics, but more importantly, she's has a role in strategic marketing in the agricultural sector in Ukraine. And before this, had many senior roles in marketing for an international accounting firm and IT firms, and is a mother of two, and has also a number of things to say about the status of women and the role of women in Ukrainian society. but before let me bring you up to speed what we've been talking about. We've been talking about some of the inequalities of the status of women in Ukraine and some of the historic and conceptual roots of those patterns of inequality, and have become and have started to envision some of what would be necessary to do as a program to change that, and also I've been talking a bit about some of the lessons, both positive and negative, to take from, say, the United States and other countries that have gone on down this road. But before we get so I want to complete the thought I was in the middle of, and then ask Victoria for a chance to give us some final words. So what we did in the U.S. was we created equality legalistically, that is, we passed, for example, the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which was huge, and created a huge increase in legal opportunities for women to have economic opportunities. Whoops, we lost Victoria, or Victoria, you still with us? Oh well. Anyway, thank you, Victoria, if you're not still with us. All right, let me continue. We created, we did a number of other legislative and administrative moves to open the doors to women to enter traditionally male-dominated professions. But we did not intentionally change a lot of other social structures, as Peter was saying. We didn't address the situation of childcare. We didn't have a strategy for that. We didn't address what did it mean for to have a lot of women who would have become teachers not becoming teachers anymore, and therefore there's a net outflow, a huge outflow of talent from the teaching professions. There's a number of other things that we didn't do. And most fundamentally, we didn't address the conceptual level. We didn't address the conceptual level that said women have a certain nature and therefore a certain role in society, and that's what is supposed to drive everything. We didn't really address that conceptually, and so that's where I would say to really address these problems, to create genuine equality, you have to do it ultimately at the conceptual level. You have to change how, because by the time you get to 14-year-old boys who already think that girls are lesser or less important, or then in a way it's already too late. So this is my little speech. This is kind of bringing you up to the speed of where we've been in the conversation. Can you, we talked a little bit about some thoughts that you have about the status of women in Ukraine and where things are at. What would you like to tell us? What would you like to tell the an American audience about these things?
We are nearby the same page here with you. There is some, I have some very specific position in this part because I'm a working mom, and I will always be dedicated to my career, and I always been dedicated to my people and to my children. And there is really some inequality in this world, which is like quite objective, because humanity does not figure out another way of delivering babies to this world except of woman's body. And some of us, me for example, did it with a joy. It was a pleasure, and I'm happy that I did it. But in the same way, I had a very keen interest in my career, and it was important for me to be professional in what I'm doing. And it happens to be very hard to fulfill both of these full-time jobs, you know. I think that we're underestimating the need of be a woman and be a mother in any time of realization that you have. From one way, and then society expects you to work like a man who has a wife who does everything for him from other hand. And that is some inconvenience that should be solved. And I believe that childcare and the system of childcare and the whole approach that we as a society have to raise children would affect a lot if we will be supported in this way. That's a kind of it. In Ukraine, we are like more women in Ukraine traditionally, historically have more power and rules. We expect ourselves to be very powerful and influential in our families. From centuries, Ukrainian women is a very strong archetype. Yeah, it is, and we are much not like our neighbors in this town, because in our neighbor they are very
patriarchal.
Not this way. Patriarchal, yeah, not this way at all. In Ukraine, that is the usual thing. We had like men who were warriors and women who ruled all the stuff when men are fighting for all of us. So that's a usual thing for us. We are strong. We get used to express ourselves. We raise our voices each time we should do this or we won't do this. I have no restrictions for this in my head, and my girl, I have a daughter, she's 7, and she says everything she wants to say without any doubt. That is the good point of being Ukrainian woman as well.
A tradition of strength, outspokenness,
yes,
and
rule the family for centuries, you know.
Okay.
Now we rule not only our families, but our businesses and state and society as well.
Victoria, very glad to have
Sorry
you back.
for being because of bad internet connection. I'm sorry.
No, I was worried why we had lost you.
But as possible from here.
Great. I wanted to give you, before we move on, an opportunity to speak and say anything else that you wanted to say about the conversation we've been having about your, and if let's say your hopes and your visions for how Ukraine can be a more equal society, and what you personally imagine doing to make that happen.
So you want me?
I want you to fix it all personally. Could you do that for us, please?
That's big. Okay.
Yeah, because I know you're not going to be busy with your career and your home and all of that, so you need to change the world as well for us, please.
So you wanna?
So do I guess let me rephrase it. Is there anything that you would like an American audience to understand about the role of women and gender relations in Ukraine that maybe they don't understand?
Okay. We have a lot of problems, but we are like at least young generation. We know that we have problems, and we're trying to work on it and trying to improve our society and our place in this society. So it is not so bad as it can, as they can think. So, and when the full invasion of Russia started in Ukraine, yes, I think you mentioned that. Oh, I don't know who mentioned it. Sorry, Peter, of you or you. It was about that women have a lot of things to do in that hard time, and because of that, we can show us as very useful people in society. Then we're not only serving the service scene, we also like a part of society, and yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I just want to say one thing. I repeat the challenges. So I learned from Athena and our other friend Pini about the concept of entropy in physics, and they taught me what that means. And so, for example, entropy is increase in disorder. So an example that they gave me, and just bear with me, it's relevant. The example they gave me was, I remember when they were here and we were in this little house talking about this, is a container where it has separation between one substance and another substance. That's completely separated. So there is a concentration of one substance here in one part of the container and a concentration of substance in the other.
Well, let's say water and Coca-Cola, for example.
Water and Coca. Oh, Coca. You had to do Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And
you prefer
is,
what? Beer? Something? I don't know what you eat.
No, coffee. Of
coffee.
Course, but
Water,
anyway.
coffee. Okay.
Anyway, and we assume that the system is closed. Notice this is according to the physics. It's the highest level of order. When you have a binary situation, they're all separate. These are separate from each other. As you now remove the separation, the two substances begin to mix into each other, and that is beginning to increase what they call in physics disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the relevance?
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us.
So as society tries to deal with what Athena calls removing of this binary, sharp binary conception, the binary conception offered a certain order, a very, very clear order along many, many vectors. Your job is this, not this. You are here, not there. You are supposed to do this at 8, not that at 8.
And that's
very clear. What?
And that offers a balance in some way. Yeah?
Yes, and that creates very, very sharp order. Of course, the sacrifice that you have is the way the order was designed traditionally throughout the centuries, is that the whole population could not fulfill themselves. Because they were restricted for doing just that. Actually, the whole population, because maybe men also couldn't fulfill themselves, or at least all of them. And as you begin removing that separation, the laws of physics tell you disorder begins to increase. Because now all the areas in which it was clear who does what are now not there anymore. You have to reinvent all of these things in order to accommodate the mixing. And I think that the reason I'm mentioning this is because it is a very challenging process for society to do that. It's not easy. And an enlightened society knows, or at least is conditioned to anticipate some of the difficulties and begin at least acknowledging them and saying, how are we going to solve these difficulties? How are we going to reorganize things when things beginning to get mixed in such a way that we introduce deliberately and intentionally structures into society that anticipate the expected problems and tries to resolve them proactively. And I think that here in the United States, we couldn't have done a worse job, I think. So you should look at United States as the hotbed of the experiment that in many respects failed, and learn from it, and insist that your society, as it removes this barrier, anticipates what the problems will be and tries to proactively resolve them.
So on that, Olya, you're raising two young kids while working in a professional job. What are what are some of the problems? We can probably guess. And what are your thoughts about how to resolve them?
I have a theory, which you might like. I believe that proper education to girls could change a lot, because we are still standing here in Ukraine. We are still standing on a position that's quite traditional. And it could be illustrated by a story that we have with the photo shoot of our First Lady, Olena Zelenska, which by Annie Leibovitz, which was a huge success because it's a very big like cultural event. It was a great photos, and Annie was picturing a Ukrainian woman in the middle of the war, having to deal with all of that. And on one of the pictures, Olena was sitting on the low chair, I believe, with her legs a little bit spread. And we had a discussion within Ukrainian society: is it appropriate to a first lady who represents all the women of Ukraine to sit like this? Because we are girls, we should behave ourselves. And I was really surprised by this, because in my nearest social connections, we didn't have such a position, but it happens that it was like a widespread across the country with women that was questioning ourselves: do we have a right to sit on an official picture like that with such a pose?
Yeah, and to be clear, she was wearing pants and very strong. There was nothing at all sexual or salacious about it at all.
Woman please.
Yeah, it was just like, there was a huge support action in society for her too, and there was a hashtag in Ukrainian that was like, can we swear here, Athena? I'm sorry.
We'll take a vote. I vote in favor of swearing. Peter?
I found a word. This. My swearing English is not so good, sorry.
Go ahead and swear.
We had hashtag that to support her, which in Ukrainian, which meant a Ukrainian woman who fed up, who just fed up because we face a lot of pressure. That's true. And we have no resources to look pretty because we like to look pretty, but it happened to be hard these times. And I'm telling this story to illustrate that we have this like very vivid trend of sticking to the traditional woman's roles, which may not be bad, because I'm very resonating with what Peter said, that when we disbalance the whole system, okay, let's answer the simple question: what is the man's role? Is because men's roles, like for ages, was developing from dependent state of women, and that is a huge question. Maybe being traditional is not. I'm just saying it as an option. Maybe being traditional is not so bad, but I believe that should be a conscious choice of each of us. And to do this conscious choice, we should be educated properly. We should build our economic independence from our parent families, from our husbands and boyfriends and so on, to have this ground to stand and decide by ourselves. And after all, standing here, we can choose, okay, I want to be a traditional wife, I want to take care of how my children, and it's okay for me, it's enough for me. Or I don't want to have a husband and children at all. I want to be an independent woman who builds career, who changes the country, who solves some problems. And that is a good choice too. But for the majority of Ukrainian girls, I believe, now that is more like a trend they are following, not the conscious decision to do. Because I have an example of a very independent, very successful woman who didn't manage to create a family, for example, and they're suffering from that. It's not a fancy thing to do. It's not a trendy thing to say now because we are like popularizing the other way. But I am a woman, and I know that it hurts not to be realized in some of your nature part of you, and that is drawback of it. But I believe the whole point is that we all deserve to be happy in what we mean for us to be happy, and to go through this path to this happiness we need some tools, and the only tool that could help us to solve this whole problem, I believe, is the education for boys as well. But for girls, it's more essential because we have more difficult choices to do, just because of our biology, you know.
And what particularly, what do you mean by education? You know, the particular type of training, or do you mean just better education generally? Is education for girls and women inferior now? What do you mean by this?
That's I will give you an example. That's changed nowadays, but I was raised on south of Ukraine. We have a very diverse and very multicultural.
What part? What
in Odessa.
Odessa.
Born in Crimea and raised in Odessa region, that is Bessarabia, which is like, you know, it's Earth Babylon, new Earth Babylon, a lot of nationalities, a lot of cultures, a lot of languages. Summer, very tasty fruits and vegetables. It's a wonderful place to grow up. And still being in this paradise, I was raised in paradigm that the main task to fulfill for a girl in her life is to marry a good guy. And to create a family, and that is not a bad thing to do, I believe. But still, for example, myself being a girl who was very passionate about her education, it was difficult to fit in. I was loved, but not in the same way, you know. And I believe that is still an issue across the country because we love our kids, we let our kids go to school, we love our girls be successful and take good marks, but we don't really take it seriously for them. When you look at the boy, you expect him to take seriously what he is doing professionally because he is a man to be. When you look at a girl, you expect her to be nice, educated, pretty and smart, but you do not expect her to be very keen and serious about what she is doing for her professional background. And that is a slight difference of how we treat boys and girls into the educational system. I believe that we should give more options. We should give our girls to play football teams, soccer teams. You are American, sorry, soccer.
It's fine.
Yeah,
we'll adapt, yes.
Soccer teams, it's a very man thing to do. It's just to.
I want to know that actually, girls soccer is very big in the U.S. It's
and the girls soccer team, United States soccer team, was
number one,
dominant, number one. I need to say something.
U.S. national women's team is like multiple times world champions.
Yeah. But I have to say.
Wait. We can't hear. Oh yeah, did you go on mute? We can't hear you.
No.
Okay, you're here. Okay, go on. Peter, you were saying?
I have to say also that despite that fact, and by the way, other sports as well, there is not as much financing and access to financial streams as men's sports are, even when the data shows that if there was financing and if there were access to financial streams, women's sports in certain areas would have been exploded. But they just hold them back on purpose, intentionally, so that then the 85 to 90% of the financial streams can go to men's sports. And that is a problem.
In the I'm sorry, Peter, but engineering professions, all this stuff that's dedicated to the big machinery markets.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a girl and you want to try to ride a fire machine or a tractor, you are like a very weird girl.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a boy who is keen to this, you will find your path. You know, that is repeating
So,
scenario.
I can't
Olia.
pronounce your name again.
Olia.
Olia.
Yeah.
I want to mention something to what you mentioned and Victoria as well mentioned before, in terms of her experiences of how her early years as a girl and what she was exposed in the education environment. Here's the difficulty. How do you have an education system that allows, in an authentic way, what Olia was calling for, which is options? And I think that the challenge is one of the most difficult challenges in education is how to operationalize in the education system the concept of autonomy. Autonomy is essentially self-governance. That's what it means. So how do you operationalize this concept of self-governance in an education system from the very early on and throughout? So Olia was mentioning, if a girl wants to go and play with fire engines, then if in an education system grounded in autonomy, that would not be unusual. That is her choice. She wants to explore what it is to be a fire engine person, whatever it is.
Woman, yeah.
Yeah. So
Firefighter, and there was actually a deliberate process of desexualizing the language of professions in the 1970s in the U.S. So fireman, postman, etc. Man was like these were all the names of the profession, and so they just like Hebrew had to be recreated from its ancient roots. They actually created a lot of new words to make them gender neutral.
But I want to warn against thinking that changing the language is sufficient.
No, it is not. It is necessary, but not sufficient.
It's necessary. It's an important contributing factor. The point is, here's what I want to put in a very sort of succinct way. In order to actually create a society that is just and equitable in exactly the right ways, while at the same time respecting differences, a necessary condition is an education system that is grounded in autonomy, in the concept of autonomy,
and not just in training, just in training you to fulfill a role. That's it,
right.
Which people get wrong all the time.
Yeah. It is actually seeing ourselves, each individual human person, as an autonomous individual acting within, being raised within and acting within a social framework where other members of society are equally autonomous. if we could operationalize the concept of autonomy within the education system in the proper way for each age level, I believe that we could have an organic way in which these difficulties will resolve themselves, including, by the way, people who would anticipate difficulties and address them and be able to proactively solve them. That's my spiel.
Spiel is a Yiddish word meaning little speech.
Cool, good to know.
Yeah.
That is a great question that Peter raised, I believe. For me, it will take a few years to start thinking about it.
But I think you need to in Ukraine, because let me tell you something. In United States, and I also experienced in Israel, the same problems. But now it's much worse. I haven't been there for years, but what I hear is just terrible. But anyway, in United States, that's what failed. In United States, you always solve a problem after it's almost destroyed you.
Yeah,
that's our tradition. We have a commitment to our traditions.
This is a very strong commitment to this tradition. If anybody tries to solve a problem before it destroyed you, they're going to be ostracized.
Yeah.
So what are you doing?
What are you doing?
You're changing this tradition. You can't do that. We have to first experience the pain of destruction, and then we're going to address the problem.
Right. And if you are and noticing that it's happening is not good enough. You have to.
No, of course not. and if you notice it, so for example, today, I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's a thing. We are discussing the debt limit thing in the United States. I don't know if you know about what this means.
It's very stupid thing we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people and the debt limit is essentially increasing the possibility of the budget for the United States to pay what we already spent and we owe to people. So we have to agree that, okay, we'll raise the debt limit so the United States will have money to pay what they already spent. And they all over the world. If we default on that, it is like United States went into bankruptcy. And not only the United States economy, but the whole world economy is nobody knows where it leads. There is a large number of people here who say, yeah, let's just do it. Let's go bankrupt. Well, and so what they are doing is following the tradition. Let's first destroy ourselves and then see how we solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ukraine should not fall into that pattern. Leave it to us.
Yeah, we're the specialists. Yeah. I'm
sorry.
Here, What?
We already here, for some other reasons, but we still have something to deal with.
Yeah. I don't know if it's too far off topic, but you're working in a professional capacity in a senior set of serious senior roles. What can you tell us about, and you've also had substantial international experience, so exposure to how things work across different countries, different cultures. Can you tell us from your perspective, is there a difference for how the status and the expectations for professional women in Ukraine work that's different from, say, other European countries?
I haven't been in America, and I've never experienced like a substance project work with American colleagues. But from the Europe perspective, in Ukraine, when you are a professional, nobody really care if you are a man or a woman, but still you are supposed to work equally with the same passion. And nobody pays attention that you have to fit your little kid with your breast at night, for example. That is like, okay, you are failing because you are doing your mother's job. And we have no support in this. So it takes us twice more efforts to reach the same goal as the men do. We are still underpaid a little bit in Ukraine. And we probably have this, I won't say harassment issue, but it's kind of a sexist issue that I personally faced a lot working in a very manhood kind of industry as agriculture is. Yeah. When you are trying to make a big deal in agriculture with the severe farmers, they don't even tend to speak to you from the first point of view. But then when you break this ice, it works. But still, if I was a man, I should not have been doing this at all. In Europe, I feel like there is, we face less expectations than in Ukraine, me personally. In Europe, probably because women here have this support of sharing the parents' issues with their partners, probably because in Europe they didn't got to work like we do. We do it much more in American way. We work extra hours. We do the best we can. We like put everything in it. And when I came to Europe being a professional, I face like they feel that my professional maturity does not meet my position, because in Europe, in this professional maturity, you take a higher position because there is less expectations. That is my really subjective and personal experience. We still are learning a lot from European colleagues, and we are missing a lot of parts from being more systematic and being more fulfilled in social not equalities and so on. But from other way, I feel like we can be an example of more dedicated work, of more flexibility, of a huge adaptation that we felt. I've come back just from Brussels. I was delivering a job here to a client, which headquarters is in Brussels. And for the first half an hour, I answered questions about how we deal with working under the bombs, and how do you still live in that Kyiv? But then you have been to Kyiv, you see that the life is blooming there.
Yeah.
That is the stress. We do not underestimate the stress that we are living in, but still, I believe that we are showing much more adaptive behavior and mindset than our European colleagues do.
Do you feel like the war itself is changing or creating some pressures that change views about the status of women or the roles of women?
Yeah. Ukrainian military forces are now the most close to the equality than anybody in the earth. We have like up to 25% of women serving in the army, which is a huge amount. Mm-hmm. We have generals.
I think actually Israel might have a higher proportion of women, but I'm not sure. But used to. Not really. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, every woman woman in Israel at the age of 18, unless she's married or has children, had to go to the military for 2 years.
We are like moving to we are looking a lot of discussions in Ukraine about Israel model of operating themselves, because Israel is living surrounded by people who tend to destroy them, and we will live in such neighborhood too. So we are looking at that. It's not a big deal having a woman in the military services for now, and we have a lot of men doing that. And that's why the women that was left home without men's support have to deal with everything that should be done. And it's not homes and so on. We do a lot of volunteer jobs. So we do our professional jobs. We still need to support the economy to make it breathe. We help each other. We are traveling because men are not really allowed to travel now. We are doing a lot. And that makes us to take more responsibility of our lives, of how we do. It gives us this this point of relying on a man to take as a privilege or a choice, but not as a necessarily part of your life. We are discovering that we are self-sufficient in this way, that we can organize our lives properly. And that is a big shift. I was driving a car nearby, and I noticed that I see a lot more women driving cars than I had to see before. And
because when a man and a woman get in the car, it's understood the man will do the driving.
Yeah, the man.
Yeah.
I see one of your kids there.
Yeah, hello.
One of the girls. Hi.
Is shy. Mm-hmm. He's playing soccer, by the way.
Excellent.
He's playing soccer?
Excellent.
Oh, I love soccer. I love soccer. It's one of the games that I love the most. I want to say, what? Victoria?
I used to play football when I was a child.
Oh, really?
Excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, I used to too. I used to in Israel in boarding school. I used to play football.
So metaphorically, when the men come back, when the war is over and the men come back, metaphorically, will the men get back in the driver's seat?
I think it will be okay. In Ukraine, it will be okay. In Ukraine, that is the point of our culture. Let's make it more individual level here. Mm-hmm. In Ukraine, a woman and a mother is the highest authority in family. Mm-hmm. We usually. We will like a lot. We have all this man's kind of situation here. We got used to bow our heads to this, but each woman know and each man know that in the end of the day, in very difficult situations, woman's voice will be very loud, and it should be taken into consideration. There is a problem.
Yeah, very important to be to dare using that voice, not just in the private domain, but in the public domain.
That is the main point that I'm stressing here. Yeah, in Ukraine, we have a proverb that Ukrainian warrior, Cossack, in Ukrainian warrior does not afraid nothing except of his wife. Mm-hmm. And it's very true, being honest, because we are loud in our families, and now we are pushed to learn to be loud in our societies too. And that is a huge thing to do, because I believe in personal responsibility of each person in the society to be it a good place to raise your children. And that means that each of us should do their choice, and to do this choice consciously and do the job that this choice offers you. We should be educated and well trained and prepared for this. We should be responsible. We got used to be responsible for food in the house, and we are quite professional in it. But now we should be more professional in the gasoline stations and how it works and how it affects the neighborhoods. And we should be more professional about how elections goes on a regional level, and to understand how are you voting and what are you voting for. That is the point that we need to keep our focus on.
Mm-hmm. And there is a point I would like to make. Once again, I keep doing the same thing, but I think it appears not just in the United States. Deep problems, if not solved, will fester and fester around, and eventually they resurface and shake the whole society again. So problems that are deep issues that Ukraine traditionally faced, problems like that, cannot be solved just by surface cover-up things. They have to be resolved at all levels at the root, because if they are not, they will come back. After some years or decades, they will come back and shake society once again. And if you get into a pattern of not solving the problems at the root, but covering them up, then they will keep shaking society over and over. This is what we're experiencing in this country today.
In the U.S.
And today, in the last kind of 10 years, let's say. It's a resurfacing of several problems that were never solved. The same, by the way, with Israel. Problems were not solved from the very initial creation of the country. They were ignored. They were not solved because it was too hard to solve them systematically. And they keep reappearing, and now they reappeared again. So learn from the lessons of the failures, because I'll tell you something, if you don't solve these problems systematically, whatever democracy you will build as you hopefully get out of this war, begin rebuilding, identify the root problems and try to solve them as much as best as possible. Don't let them fester. Don't say, okay, it's too hard to solve the problem, so I'm not going to deal with it. Let's just bury it and then let's go on. Because they will come back. In United States, currently, we are in a situation that we are very close to a total divorce.
Yeah.
That
total
sounds,
divorce. What? Excuse me?
That sounds scary, we rely on you very much.
I know, and the whole democracy in the whole world relies on United States, but democracy in United States is under attack because it was never resolved. Certain issues were never resolved, but covered up. And then counter forces managed to neutralize those ways in which they were covered, and then they resurface again.
Yeah, that's always for sure. Yeah.
So we've been talking for quite a while, and it's been a really great and invigorating talk. But we are going to have to wrap it up. So, but I want to give our two guests a last opportunity. If there's something you want to say about, and we haven't even gotten to LGBT issues very much, but I hope we will next time. So starting with Victoria, do you feel an optimism? Let's say that's maybe a cheap and easy question because it's easy to say yes. But do you have a vision about a society where women and men have the ability to realize their autonomy and fulfill their potential?
Of course, I have optimistic vision because, we have now a little progress. So I believe that with times we will improve our society and let all people be equal and feel free in the society, and not be like in cage,
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that we are in the right way.
Mm-hmm. And Olya, would you do you have any vision?
Little tiny thing. I want to thank you for support to all the people that who might have been looking. Sorry, I've used this future. Might be watching this video. Yeah, that's the end of the story. And I'm speaking 4 languages during these 4 weeks, and it's messed. Yeah, I want to thank for all this support. We really feel it here. And the main point here is that I have a privilege being Ukrainian here in Kyiv, having a discussion about equality and about women's rights, and not being bombed and not being, raped by Russian soldiers here. And that is because we are fighting good, but people without the support of our allies, and that is a huge thing to do. We all appreciate it a lot, and we hope that we not miss this chance to build something great here afterwards.
Well, we deeply appreciate what you are doing, both for Ukraine but also for defending democracy We know that you are on the front lines, not just of Ukraine, but of democracy around the world, and you have our immense appreciation. So, Peter, there. All
right. My closing words for this session are sort of two ideas. One is pay attention to the difficulties you face. And I mentioned, today I was primarily focused on what kind of challenges you're going to face, learning from experiences that fail. And the other point is, you are now in the world, actually, and I hate to put this burden on you, you are, to a large extent, the hope of democracy in the world. If you succeed, I believe that democracy will be strengthened. And yes, United States is helping and other countries are helping enormously. But none of the other countries nor United States sacrificing their own people. And so you have the burden of actually giving hope to democracy in the world. If you succeed not only territorially, but in terms of the nature and character of a society and culture. So we're all looking forward to your success and learning from you.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. We'll do our best.
We have no doubt. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
All right. You have a good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.